I'm Ava, and until 12 months ago, I believed I had everything mapped out perfectly. I held a stable position as a senior marketing manager at a media corporation in central Chicago, maintained a cozy apartment, and shared my life with a husband I considered my true companion in all things. Then the pandemic struck. The corporation began cutting staff, and I found myself among the initial casualties. Initially, I maintained an optimistic outlook. Given my professional background and expertise, I assumed I'd secure employment rapidly. However, the employment landscape proved merciless. Days stretched into weeks, weeks expanded into months, and our financial reserves began evaporating. I managed to secure occasional freelance projects, but these scarcely covered our rent, never mind utilities and food expenses. During this period, my husband Brad, who had also been terminated from his IT support role around the same time frame, descended into a perilous form of complacency. Following his first few rejections, he ceased pursuing employment opportunities. He claimed he required a mental respite, which translated into spending entire days lounging on our sofa, engaging with video games, and purchasing takeout using my credit card. At first, I refrained from voicing complaints. I convinced myself he simply needed additional time. By the 8th month, however, reality crystallized. I was shouldering both our emotional and financial burdens. Then, unexpectedly, I received correspondence from a prominent advertising agency I had contacted months earlier. They sought a senior media strategist and requested an in-person interview. Upon reading this message, tears nearly escaped my eyes. It seemed like divine intervention, suggesting our circumstances were finally improving. When I informed Brad, his reaction appeared surprisingly enthusiastic. He leaped from the couch, embraced me, and declared, "This is our moment. This could transform everything for us." For an instant, warmth filled me. Perhaps this development would inspire him to regain his footing as well. However, his enthusiasm took an unusual direction. That evening, while I selected a professional outfit for the interview, a navy blue blazer with matching trousers, he entered the bedroom carrying a form-fitting red dress I hadn't worn in years. "You should wear this," he suggested. "It's striking. You need to distinguish yourself." I regarded him with confusion. "It's an interview, Brad, not a romantic encounter." "Exactly," he grinned. "That's how you create a lasting impression. These executives examine hundreds of resumes weekly. You enter that room looking like that, believe me, they'll remember you." I dismissed it with laughter, assuming he was jesting. He wasn't. The following morning, he positioned a small paper bag beside my coffee cup. Inside lay a packet of birth control pills. "Brad, what in hell is this?" I demanded, stunned. "Just as a precaution," he responded casually, not even glancing up from his phone. "You never know how these situations develop. If he extends a dinner invitation, just exercise wisdom." I felt as though I'd been struck in the abdomen. Was he genuinely proposing that I flirt, or worse, to obtain the position? He must have detected my horror, because he quickly added, "I'm not suggesting you do anything foolish. I'm simply saying don't be so rigid. This could represent our escape route, Ava. Don't sabotage it." That night, sleep eluded me. My body felt drained, but my mind continued racing. Had my husband truly changed so drastically, or had I simply never witnessed this aspect of his character before? I examined my reflection the next morning. Makeup half applied, the red dress draped across the chair. I had no comprehension of what awaited me, but one thing was certain. Something felt wrong. Deep within, I sensed that whatever transpired next would alter everything. Brad insisted on driving me to the interview. I preferred he didn't, but he argued it would appear more favorable if I arrived with accompaniment, as though I possessed support. We arrived at an upscale restaurant downtown. Not a corporate office, not a conference room, but a restaurant. I re-examined the email. It clearly stated casual interview dinner with executive team. I had assumed it would be a networking-style arrangement. I was mistaken. "Wow, this establishment is elegant," Brad commented, exiting the vehicle as though he owned it. He adjusted his jacket, one of mine, incidentally, and winked at me. "Now remember, smile, laugh at his jokes, and allow me to handle most of the conversation." That should have served as the ultimate warning sign. Inside, the host escorted us to a private room in the rear. Seated there was a middle-aged gentleman in a navy suit, with slicked-back hair, and a drink already in his possession. He rose when we entered, displaying a predatory grin. "Mr. Paul," Brad greeted him like a longtime friend. "This is my wife, Ava." Mr. Paul's eyes examined me from head to toe in a manner that made my skin crawl. Well, Brad wasn't exaggerating. "You are absolutely stunning." I forced a smile. "Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you." Beside him sat a younger woman, well-dressed, quiet, observant. He introduced her as Claire, his executive assistant. She acknowledged me with a polite but enigmatic expression. As we settled, Mr. Paul poured wine without asking and pushed a glass in my direction. "So, Ava, I understand you're interested in joining our team," he said. I nodded. "Yes, I'm very enthusiastic about the media strategist position. I've worked in marketing for over 7 years. He waved his hand dismissively. "Let's not delve into resumes tonight. I prefer to understand the individual behind the paperwork. What motivates you, Ava? What are you prepared to do for success?" Brad chuckled beside me. "She's the most committed person I know. Whatever is required, she'll accomplish it." I turned toward him slowly. "Excuse me." Mr. Paul leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Relax. We're all adults here. In this industry, it's not merely about skills. It's about chemistry, personality, presentation." Claire remained silent, her gaze shifting between us, observing and recording everything without uttering a word. Brad placed his hand on my thigh beneath the table. "Come on, Ava. Don't be timid." I felt my throat constrict. Every fiber of my being wanted to flee, to scream, to hurl the wine into his arrogant face. But something restrained me. Some morbid curiosity, or perhaps the sense that this was a test of something greater. "Mr. Paul," I said, maintaining a steady voice, "I'm here because I'm qualified, not because I wore a red dress." He smirked. "Of course you're qualified, but let's be honest. Ava, when a woman looks like you, it's wasteful not to capitalize on it." I clenched my jaw. Brad laughed again, then turned to me with a proud smile. "I told you he'd adore you." The conversation deteriorated from there. Mr. Paul began sharing stories about his boat, how he conducts private interviews aboard it. Brad participated like they were fraternity brothers, contributing suggestive jokes, while never once acknowledging my discomfort. Finally, Mr. Paul said, "Why don't we continue this tomorrow evening? A little sunset cruise, just me and Ava. Brad, naturally. You're welcome to remain home and rest." I turned to Brad, expecting some kind of reaction. A raised eyebrow, a refusal. Instead, he leaned back, smiled, and said, "I think that's an excellent idea." In that moment, something inside me shattered. Not just anger or shame, but a kind of clarity. My husband wasn't my partner. He was my pimp, and he had no idea what I was about to do next. The journey home was quiet. Too quiet. Brad didn't seem to notice that I hadn't spoken a word since we departed the restaurant. Or maybe he noticed and didn't care. That stupid, satisfied grin remained plastered across his face the entire drive, as though he'd just completed a successful business transaction. When we entered our apartment, he collapsed onto the couch as though nothing had occurred. "That went brilliantly, didn't it?" he said, kicking off his shoes. "Mr. Paul clearly adores you. He even invited you on his boat. That's enormous." I stood frozen in the hallway. "Enormous," I repeated, my voice flat. Brad glanced over at me, still smiling. "Come on, don't be like that. You didn't expect to simply walk in there and secure a 6-figure job with your resume alone, did you?" I took a step toward him. "You're saying I have to sleep with someone to obtain employment?" Brad rolled his eyes. "Jesus, Ava. No one's asking you to do anything you don't want to. Just go on the boat. Be charming. Flirt a little. If he likes you, the job is yours. What's the big deal?" "The big deal is that you're asking your wife to prostitute herself for a damn job." Brad sat up, annoyed now. "That's not what I'm doing. Don't twist it. I'm thinking about us, our future. You said yourself we're drowning financially. I'm just being realistic." "No," I said, my voice rising. "You're being disgusting." He stood up too. "Don't be dramatic. You act like I'm throwing you to the wolves. It's one night. He gets a little eye candy, you get a paycheck, and we both win." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My heart was pounding, my skin hot with rage. I walked straight into the bedroom and locked the door behind me. I collapsed onto the bed and stared at the ceiling, trying not to cry. I couldn't believe this was the man I married, the man who once held my hand during job interviews, who brought me coffee during late-night projects. Where had that man gone? The next morning, Brad knocked on the door as though nothing had happened. "Hey, babe," he called through the wood. "I'm thinking you should wear that black one-piece you wore in Miami. Remember? Shows just enough without giving it all away." I didn't respond. I just stared at my reflection in the mirror. "You're quiet," he continued. "Are you nervous? Don't be. Just smile, laugh at his jokes, and drink whatever he offers you. Trust me. You'll be fine." He walked away humming. I should have left right then. Grabbed my bag, walked out the door, and never looked back. But instead, I remained. Something held me there. Something deeper than fear. Maybe I needed to see it through. Maybe I wanted to witness just how far he'd go. Or maybe I wanted revenge. At 6 p.m., Brad drove me to the marina. The yacht was massive, sleek, and offensively white. Mr. Paul was already on board, shirt open, drink in hand. He looked like every stereotype of a midlife crisis in human form. "Look at you," he said as I stepped aboard. "I knew you'd clean up nicely." Claire was there too, in a different outfit this time. She handed me a glass of champagne with a carefully neutral expression. I accepted it, but didn't drink. Brad stood on the dock, waving like a proud father sending his daughter off to prom. I felt bile rise in my throat. The boat pulled away from the dock. Mr. Paul showed me around like he was giving me a tour of a palace. Bedroom, mini-bar, hot tub. He made comments the entire time about my legs, my waist, how smart girls with bodies like yours are rare these days. I laughed when I needed to. smiled when expected. Inside, I was boiling. Finally, he said, "Let's sit. I want to talk business." He poured more champagne, sat across from me, and leaned in close. "You've got potential, Ava. Real potential. But in this industry, loyalty matters. Trust matters. I need to know you're willing to do what's necessary." I met his gaze. "And what exactly is necessary?" He smirked. "You know what I mean. Say yes tonight, and by Monday, you'll have a corner office." I leaned back, took a long breath, and smiled. "Sure," I said softly. "Whatever it takes." His eyes lit up like a child on Christmas morning. But in my mind, a plan had already begun to take shape. Because if he thought I was just another desperate woman in a tight dress, he had no idea what kind of woman he was actually dealing with. And neither did Brad. I allowed him to maintain his illusion. Every smile, every nod, every murmur I offered that evening was deliberate, calculated. I required him to believe I was capitulating, that I was another woman prepared to exchange dignity for a job title. That was the only way this strategy would succeed. Following another drink, his, not mine, Mr. Paul grew more audacious. His hand grazed my arm with increasing frequency. His compliments became increasingly crude, and he bragged about previous hires, and how many of them understood how to play the game. I participated in the charade, but I never touched the champagne. I only raised the glass to my lips, allowing the bubbles to tickle my skin without consuming any. I needed absolute mental clarity. Eventually, he rose and gestured toward the lower deck. "Let me show you something private," he said, smirking. I stood slowly, maintaining a soft expression. "Of course." He guided me down to a bedroom adorned with expensive-looking wood paneling and satin sheets that turned my stomach. He closed the door behind us, and the click of the lock resonated like a gunshot in my ears. "You know," he said, loosening his shirt, "I can tell when someone's special. You're not just beautiful, Ava. You're resourceful." I stepped forward, letting my fingers graze the edge of a nearby table. "Is that so?" I asked. He nodded, eyes gleaming. "And I reward resourcefulness. Women who know how to handle powerful men always rise to the top." His hands reached for my waist. That's when I stepped back, grabbed the glass of untouched champagne, and threw it with full force into his face. The impact wasn't violent, but it was sufficient to startle him. He stumbled, gasping as the liquid splashed into his eyes and over his shirt. "What the hell?" he barked, wiping his face. "Are you insane?" I didn't flinch. "No, I'm just finished pretending." "You think this is going to help you," he snapped. "You'll never work in this industry again." I smiled. "Funny. I was thinking the same thing about you." He stormed toward me, face red with fury, but I sidestepped and opened the door. Claire was already there, standing in the hallway. She looked me over once, saw the wet glass in my hand, the tension on my face, the rage behind my calm exterior, everything. "All right?" she asked, voice cool. "Couldn't be better," I said. She gave me the smallest nod, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to tell me she witnessed everything. I walked back up to the main deck as the boat began turning toward shore. Mr. Paul didn't follow. Brad was waiting at the dock when we returned. He jogged up eagerly, peering behind me. "Where's Paul?" he asked. "Did everything go okay?" I shrugged. "He said we'll talk soon." Brad looked puzzled but didn't press it. "You didn't mess it up, did you?" I smiled faintly. "You'll find out soon enough." That night, I packed a small bag while Brad snored on the couch, mouth open, a controller still in his hand. I stared at him for a long time, wondering how I could have ever loved someone who looked at me and saw leverage instead of a partner. This wasn't over. Not yet. Because tomorrow, the real interview would begin, and I was going to show them exactly who I was. The next morning, I received another email from the company. Only this time, it wasn't from Mr. Paul or anyone I'd met the previous evening. It was from Claire. Subject line: Final round executive evaluation. The message was brief and precise. I was invited to the company's headquarters for a final assessment. Business attire required. No guests. No exceptions. Brad didn't question it. He assumed this was a formality, a follow-up to my performance the previous night. He even handed me his cologne and said, "Make sure you smell nice. First impressions last." I didn't reply. I arrived at the headquarters at noon sharp. The building was tall, sleek, modern. Nothing like the sleazy dinner from the previous evening. A receptionist led me to the top floor, where a wide conference room overlooked the city skyline. Inside were a dozen people in suits. Some looked like board members. Others were likely senior executives. And at the far end of the table, seated confidently in a navy blazer and the silk blouse, was Claire. Except today, she wasn't the assistant. She was the CEO. I took my seat in silence. Claire folded her hands and looked around the room. "Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, we're gathered here to finalize a critical hiring decision for a leadership role in our media division." I kept my expression steady. "We conducted a unique, ethically focused evaluation over the past week," Claire continued. "One that tests not only competence, but character." At that, a man at the far end pressed a button on a remote. A screen lit up on the wall. What followed was a video, grainy but clear. Security footage. The restaurant. The yacht. Every word. Every smirk. Every touch. Brad handing me a paper bag with birth control. Mr. Paul suggesting I'd be the main course. Me saying nothing. Expression dead inside. Then the moment on the boat. The champagne splash. My words. "I'm just finished pretending." The room was silent when it ended. Claire stood up. "Mr. Paul," she said calmly, "is not an employee of this company. He's a professional actor we hired to conduct what we call a moral stress test. Ava's husband, Brad, was unaware of this." She turned to me. "We watched you the entire time, Ava. We watched how you carried yourself, how you didn't drink, how you stayed sharp, how you played along just long enough to gather information. We saw you make a choice, not for survival, but for integrity." I felt something tighten in my throat. "Brad," Claire continued, "was told that if you impressed Mr. Paul, he'd receive a signing bonus for referring a qualified candidate. In reality, he was being tested too. 2 days later, I received an invitation to speak at a leadership conference on workplace ethics and gender dynamics. It was an honor and a perfect opportunity. During my keynote, I shared a story. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I spoke about the silent pressures women face in male-dominated industries, about the subtle and not so subtle coercion disguised as opportunities, and about the power of saying no, even when it costs you everything. The audience was captivated. Cameras recorded every word. Applause thundered at the end. As I stepped off stage, I saw him, Brad. He was standing at the back of the room, dressed in a too-tight suit, with a face full of regret. He didn't approach, didn't speak, just stared at me like a ghost watching the life he could have had. I walked past him without breaking stride, but just before I reached the exit, I paused. I didn't turn around, just spoke softly enough for him to hear. "You once said women are like cars," I said. "Well, Brad, you just lost your license." Then I walked away, not out of anger, not out of vengeance, but because some people don't deserve a second look, only a final one.